And we're recording now. Welcome to a very thrice very exciting episode of the Good Listening To podcast with me, Chris Grimes. It's the podcast series that brings you The Clearing, where all good questions come to be asked and all good stories come to be told. Now, this lovely man, Colin Hurley, if I may, The Clearing could have been designed in your honour because it is a bit like Shakespeare's roundel. All the world's a stage. It's an empty space brimming and charged with potential. And I know the numerous times in your wonderful career that you've stepped into that space, into the sunlight of a clearing. All the world's a stage and all the men and women merely players. This is Colin Hurley. Now, you're extremely welcome. It's a very rainy day here in Bristol, but many years ago I had a very glorious spring in the sunlight and sunshine with you, because I was lucky enough to be in a very, for me, very seminal production of Hamlet with you in the starring role. So when I got going with the Good Listening To podcast, I was particularly excited to speak to you. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the glorious, wonderful actor that is Colin Hurley. Woohoo!
Thank you. I can't think of a welcome that's ever been better than that. That's the best welcome. The award for best welcome ever for Colin Hurley goes to you, mate.
And right back at you, the award for best Hamlet should have been in the bag for you. You know, the conceit, obviously, with Polonius is to look at you all the way through the play. I was playing that, but to look at you and wonder if you're barking or not. My slight problem, because you were so brilliant, was I was looking at you thinking, excuse my French, fuck me, you're awesome. You were just brilliant. And so the nature of ensemble is what I learned from you, because that idea of spiralling excellence. And I'd only recently graduated from the Old Vic Theatre School, and to be on stage with you was a lesson and a great, I suppose, exposition of what the nature of ensemble should be. So that lovely tension of not wanting to be the weak link when you were being so phenomenally good. So, yes, I'm grateful that you're here. So what's your story of the day? How is Colin Hurley, you lovely bushy-faced man?
I'm doing all right, thanks, Chris. Yeah, it's lovely hearing you talk about that Hamlet. It's funny with some. There are just times when things all come together, don't they? And we had this lovely director. What was his name? Carl Hibbert.
Exactly. I've just Googled him this morning, actually, and I've just tried to. I'm telling him I'm speaking to you today, so I think we'll be back in touch with each other, all of us.
But that idea of having such a compressed cast, there were just 6 of us. I think Shakespeare works better, you know, when you haven't got to try and remember who 20 different actors are playing.
Yes.
It all focuses. Also, everyone's got a lot to do.
Yes.
And then that means everyone gets warmed up and everyone's, motors are running properly. So I think there was lots of good stuff.
And indeed, as I understand the journey of your career, your journey to now, and we'll talk about where you are today, obviously, but you just played Horatio the summer before, and then it was a bit like you had a bit of an upgrade because your career was really on the ascension, and then there you were at the Salisbury Playhouse playing Hamlet.
Yes, that was, when we met, that was one of my peaks, if you like. And after a peak, my pattern is, 10 years go into it, and then you have your peak, and then I get lost. I got very lost straight after one more job after the Hamlet. So and it's a sweet point.
Sure thing. And of course, subsequently, you've always been on my radar to keep an eye on you, as in I'm watching you. I came to see you in Farinelli and the King. I know that you've been a real foil over the years of Mark Rylance, where you've been in the Globe Theatre. Again, this idea of the roundel, the globe. You're a Shakespearean expert, obviously, and I know you've travelled globally. See what I'm doing there with the educational outreach of the Globe too, haven't you?
Yeah, that was that'd be under my heading of things that shaped me.
We're going to come on to all of that. So yes, I'm going to take you then, with your permission, and thank you for being here, through the storytelling metaphors of the journey to now in your Good Listening To podcast. Damn good listening. And first of all, Colin Hurley, what is a clearing like for you? Where do you go to get clutter-free, inspirational and able to think?
I had to have a good old think about this, because I haven't got one. My initial response when you said that was, I haven't got a clearing, I wish I did. And then I tried to blame my family and everyone, and then I realised that way madness lies. I guess I've got a few little retreat spaces. One would be doing my yoga, doing my swimming, going to the gym, exercise. Another one that hasn't always been very helpful for the rest, anyone around me. But touring, working away from home, then
The
I
idea of being on
was,
an open road like a sort of travelling player,
yeah, yeah. The important bit being that I can leave all my life and responsibilities and things I haven't sorted out behind.
the great escape. Sort
Yes. And that's always been with me. Even, I mean, way back in the days when you get a contract to go and work in a rep company for 5 or 6 months, I would always just give up my digs in London. Ridiculous. And each time I came back, I'd have to pay twice as much and find a new place.
so you really thought that through.
Yeah, planning's never been my strong point.
So there's something about always being pulled towards the clearing of the next adventure, is what I'm reading between the lines there.
That's a good reading, mate. A good reading, yes. There's a lot of aspiration and wishing and disappointment with what I see in the mirror. It's been a big theme.
And by the way, what's so beautiful about that is therein lies the human condition, because we're all we're all in our time. Not to go straight into all the world's a stage, but we are often dashed on. We need the highs, the lows for the highs. We're sometimes dashed on the rocks of disappointment. We're sometimes bathed in glorious sunlight.
Yeah. Now those highs and lows are interesting, aren't they? Because a couple of years back, I was struggling with various nonsense, and a lady who gave psychological help at our local doctors. She's not a doctor herself, but a social worker. She unofficially diagnosed me as type 2 bipolar.
Okay.
Said, oh, this is what I'm seeing and hearing. And I thought about it, and I remember thinking, oh, that's such a relief. I'm not just weird. But then afterwards, I thought, hang on a minute, I'm not bipolar. My life is.
Interesting.
And I think for artists, the highs are higher, the lows are lower.
Yes.
And I don't mean like artists as a special breed, but if you're open to creativity in any area,
Yeah.
and if you let go of some of the security of a routine and the things that society offers us to make us feel safe.
And
then,
coming full circle there's that lovely proposition then, as Polonius looking at you, you're not completely mad, you're just slightly mad. And you had so was it a sweet release of diagnosis, or have you rebelled against that diagnosis? So do you disagree with it now?
No, I absolutely embrace it. I love it. I've got a mate she was very clear. She said type 2 bipolar. And I've got a mate who's type 1 bipolar. And there was a kind of snobism. He went, oh no, type 2, that's a personality disorder. It's not a medical condition. And I felt well and truly put in my place.
In your boxer. And if I may ask you, because I know of your connections, did you ever have that type of discussion with Stephen Fry or people like that? Because I know that you were in that very, very seminal theatre moment of that incredibly famous production of Twelfth Night.
Right. Well, no, he's an open book. He's extraordinary. He'll talk to anyone about anything. But I didn't particularly go me too with him.
Uh-huh.
But you hear it enough. I mean, whenever I've had my kind of wobbles or breakdowns or whatever, my difficult times, I've always been really amazed. And I should know by now, but as soon as you start talking about it, people are coming out of the woodwork saying, "Oh yeah, I got that. I did that. I did." And you're surrounded by people going through the same stuff.
I'm really struck, obviously, with the Hamlet line of, showing the mirror to nature, because then what you're on the open road of doing there is really showing humanity.
Yeah, yes. And you might think you're holding the mirror up, and then you find that there's a mirror coming back at you as well.
Yes.
I think one of the attractions of acting, once you get, I started it just because I wanted to show off and loved the attention. There's just no two ways about that. It's very, very shallow motivation. But then you stick with the job, and it offers you all sorts of insights. You can't help but notice stuff about yourself.
And by the way, you mustn't do yourself ever the disservice of thinking you have a shallow disposition, because what I experience in the many things I've seen you do, and I'll talk about something else that I was particularly struck with, there is really a seismic depth of humanity in there. I'm not just being nice to you. The example I'm thinking of last summer, when you came back into my focus, I was in France on holiday. The pandemic had just gone and we just escaped to get somewhere, thinking, should we? This is weird, but we were there. But I tuned in to you doing this extraordinary project, which is called Illyria, which is about you being positioned. We're all, you were globally different positioned, but you were personifying the madness of Malvolio in this online concept, which I think was quite pioneering, and you can tell us more about it. But it was Illyria, and I was just watching you play out the madness of Malvolio in an extraordinary, gripping way. But you were on your own doing it. It was very much the sort of you were just there on your own doing it.
Yeah, I'm really glad you saw that. As well. One of those bits of work that I felt really proud of, and would have loved everyone to have seen. Not even particularly for me. That's when the work goes well, you sort of have to give up ownership of it, don't you?
Yes.
But you'll know that with improv, the really pinging bits of improvisation aren't things that you planned. You know, you might have, turned the soil over, but it just happens instinctively.
And we're going to be talking about alchemy and gold, as we know later on in the construct of what we're discussing. So you're clearing then. I fully expected you to talk about it being a theatre space, but it's this idea of being pulled towards the next adventure. So you can choose a location. You can pin your flag in the soil. Where would you like to be? Because I'm going to arrive with a tree to start to shake your tree to see which storytelling apples fall out.
All right. Well, I think a tree would look very nice in between those two big pillars on the globe stage, wouldn't it?
Let's go. Lovely. And by the way, as I mentioned before, I think you've spouted some of my favourite monologues of history. You've played Henry V. You've done St Crispin's Day. Have you done "Oh for a Muse of Fire"? Have you ever been the chorus of Henry V as well?
We obviously I learnt the speech. We did a production at the Globe. The Ensemble did a production, and we decided we were going to share it up. So we all, in theory, we all learnt it, and then we were going to just just like jazz, see who wants to speak the next line and who wants to do this. And we discovered very quickly that most of us had only learnt the first half. So everyone was dead keen for the first 10 lines.
You can do the second half. You can do the second half.
Well, no, I didn't fancy it by then. I was too tired.
Because, by the way, back in my sort of experience of Shakespeare, I remember John Woodvine back in the day coming on stage with the English Shakespeare Company. This was before I subsequently met you at Salisbury, and he came on stage with a glass of wine in his hand and started doing the chorus. And I was just gobsmacked at the Bath Theatre Royal that this guy was just going, but it was just absolutely whacking the back. Again, it's just profound when you learn, when you're bathed in greatness. And so talking of bathed in greatness, it's back to you, dear. Flag in the sand. We're going to be between the two pillars then in the Globe Theatre. Marvellous. So here I am then with, it's going to sound quite sort of waiting for Godot now. I'm arriving with a tree in your clearing, and we're going to shake your tree to see which storytelling apples fall out. Now, thank you for doing this before we spoke. You've had 5 minutes, Colin Hurley, or as long as you needed, to think about 4 things that have shaped you, 3 things that inspire you, 2 things that never fail to grab your attention. Ooh, squirrels, that's borrowed from the film Up, by the way. And then 1 quirky or unusual fact about you, Colin Hurley, we couldn't possibly know until you tell us. Over to you in a moment. I'm just going to shut my window because the dust cart is weaving its magic, and I think that might interfere on the soundscape. So you have a thought. I'll be back in a minute post dust truck. The comedy of being on Zoom. So over to you, pulling you towards your clearing to shake your tree, Colin Hurley.
4 things that shaped me. I think I'd have to go discovering acting at the age of 15. I was in a boys' school. I was quite nerdy, pretty quiet. The chances of me ever meeting a member of the opposite sex were very, very low percentages. And then one of my equally geeky mates said, "Oh, the girls' school at the road are doing a school play. Come on, early," because we all called each other by our surnames. It's that long ago. And I went, "Oh, no, all right then." And there was a wonderful man called Paul Ward he taught drama. We didn't have a drama department. No one taught drama in our school. But the girls' school had a drama department. And I went up there and met these amazing exotic creatures. And from being no good at sport and not cool and not having any fashionable clothes to suddenly getting some attention was utterly intoxicating. I couldn't get enough of it. And I decided after 1 school play, only playing a small part, Le Beau in As You Like It, but I camped it up. And then I announced to the world on the basis of that. I did. I've always kind of veered towards. I have to be very careful that I just don't turn into a sort of very very queenie old bloke from Leicester, waving me little rimp lists around and that. Not that there's anything wrong with having limp wrists.
Absolutely not.
Except that,
Nice disclaimer.
yeah, absolutely. I just kind of think I could go too far that way and never come back. So yeah, one school play, decided that's the life for me. I'm going to become an actor.
I love that. Hi diddly dee, an actor's life for me, because I'm getting.
Absolutely. Yeah, and all the lack of foresight and thought that goes with it. Poor old Pinocchio.
Yeah, and there's such bravery, as we know, in that quest to just hurl yourself into chance in that way, and that's very.
Yeah, that was then and when I left my first drama school were 2 points where I don't recognise that guy. I go, my goodness, you were so young and yet you were so determined to kind of go your way.
I know you talk about the Central School of Speech and Drama there. When you said the first drama school, was that not what you meant? Or?
I went to the Birmingham School of Speech Training and Dramatic Art, or Chappies as it was known in those days.
Chubbies? Sorry, I'm.
It was led by a lady, Miss Chapman. It was Miss Chapman's school.
Okay.
We called it Chappies.
Chappies.
Yeah, and it was an extraordinary place, run by amazing, crazy, eccentric people, all very talented. For various reasons, I left after a year. I decided I fell in love with the third year. She broke my heart, so I left in a huff, basically. And I covered it up with lots of other reasons, but that was what was going on. Hormones.
And is that the first time you fessed up that's why you left, or have you?
No. Usually I'd have confessed much earlier than this. You know,
it's taken me 10 minutes to get
more than this. So yeah, I left her and wasted a lot of time. Did lots of sort of. Do you remember Manpower? Do you remember the agency? You could
Yes,
sign
I do.
up, get temp jobs, loads and loads of jobs there, and then auditioned for London drama schools and ended up going to Central.
And by the way, we nearly overlapped, and I'm sorry that we didn't, but hey, that's the notion of time. You left in 81 and I started in 1982 to do the teaching degree.
Oh, I'd forgotten about the Central connection because I always think of you as Bristol. I assumed that you trained there.
Well, like you going to two drama schools, I was similarly greedy in that I did my teaching degree following my father's advice. If you want to be an actor, be a teacher first. He's still alive and I'm very grateful to him because all the transferable skills are still there. But then post the teaching degree at the Central School of Speech and Drama, or Screech and Trauma, I don't know whether you called it that too, but then we ended up at I ended up going to the Bristol Old Vic Theatre School as well to do a postgraduate 2 year, which brought us in our timelines of overlap. 1988 I graduated, and then 1989 I had the extraordinary, sincere privilege of being with you in that production of Hamlet in Salisbury at the Playhouse.
Well, hey. Yay. Yeah, so I think kind of everything from the age of 15, even though my relationship with acting has been quite ambivalent at times, I've given it up. I still meet people who say, I thought you'd given up, Colin. And I go, yeah, well, I tried. But definitely I kind of, that's who I am, what I do and who I am.
Do you mind me asking, have you ever had a cunning plan B on those moments when you did step down? Because I'm assuming Manpower wouldn't give you the soul food or the soul chime that you're looking for.
No, I had a very cunning plan B and a cunning plan C too. So plan B, one of the times I gave up acting because acting's stupid, I became a writer. I'm going to be a writer now. And hit exactly the same creative walls that you do as an actor very quickly. And I went, oh, it's a bit hard, this. So I went skulking back to the stage with my tail between my legs. And then I noticed all these comedians were getting fantastic acting jobs. Do you remember when Art was in the West End and they just kept getting more comedians?
Yes, I do.
I thought, that's the answer. I'll do some stand-up, then I can be in Art. And they won't know I'm an actor. They'll think I'm a comedian and everything will be brilliant. So I started dabbling in those open mic nights.
Wow.
Yeah, I reckon my poor partner at the time, Jan, and my boy Joe, they hardly saw me. I don't know if you've ever done those open mic nights, but you book a slot, you've got 5 minutes usually, and you spend a whole evening in a pub waiting for your 5 minutes. So you're staying sober. And then quite often, quite regularly, someone who's a bit higher up the food chain than you would suddenly appear, going, oh, I just want to try out some material. And then you're bumped, you're gone. Oh, no.
Bumped and sober.
Bumped and sober in a pub. Nightmare. So I did wonder what the hell I was doing. I mean, I learnt loads. Because, I mean, the first few went fine. And I went, oh, I'm obviously just a natural genius at this. But then, of course, you start to see, people say, "Oh, what about this and what about that?" And as I started working on it, and the whole thing fell apart. And
When you try to overthink the craft of it, maybe.
yeah,
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 yeah.
well, someone would say, "Well, that's not really stand up what you're doing." And I go, "Oh, right, okay then."
Oh,
And
that's interesting. So you're sort of reverting to monologuing then because of your acting sort of muscle.
yeah, I had a theory that's quite a good theory. I was convinced, having watched lots and lots before I dipped my own toe in. I was watching people live or die by the laugh. And you think, well, it's comedy, that's fair enough. But I was convinced that if I got a good enough story, that the laughter could be there or not be there, and it would still be, it would still earn its dinner as a piece. And I was kind of right.
I think you are kind of right. That sounds like a wonderful proposition, actually, because it's all about the story. Because I think what you've defaulted to is your love and joy of telling stories.
Yes, exactly. And suddenly I was able to tell a story that I'd written down and made up and imagined. So I got lots out of that. The days when things didn't go well, because my stories tended to be more than 5 minutes, so I'd chop them to bits and they'd fall apart. I'm quite a few times I'd be on the tube at 11:30 at night, crying. It's like a bloke in his 40s, tears going down his cheeks, going, "Oh, that didn't go well." But they were the ones I really learned from when it didn't go well.
And in your timeline, what sort of period was this? Because obviously I met you very profoundly just before 1990. It's such a long time ago. I get that. But when were you on the tube?
This would be about 10 years later.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I'd hit another of my plateaus. So having kind of had all the fun in rep, moving to London and going from like 3 weeks to learn Hamlet to 10 weeks to learn 3 lines at the National,
Yes.
I didn't know how to deal with that at all.
Yes.
And the small fish I found myself to be in, and the sharp elbows of the environment.
And have you bumped into people over time who just suddenly hold you in the sunshine again and say, keep going, keep going? That idea of just keep swimming. Because, I'm thinking I wish I'd met you on the tube because I'd have made you feel good about yourself because, boom, this man is astonishing.
Yeah, we're sieves though, aren't we?
Well, what, sorry?
We're sieves. So
SIDS?
people do say nice things and do encourage me, and I'll go, "Oh, thank you," and I'm okay for about 0.3 seconds.
What's a
And then it's all
SID?
gone.
Sorry.
A sieve, where you sieve
Sorry. I'm
flour.
very sorry. A sieve. Yeah, I
Yeah,
understand.
don't you apologise, mate? It's my accent. And also, it's not what you'd expect to hear. "Oh, we are sieves." But yeah, for praise and affirmation of that, I find that disappears through the little holes very quickly.
Yes.
Whereas anything negative is lumpy and gets stuck there, doesn't it? And carry that around with you for
Well,
decades.
the general stereotypical psychology is say something nice and it just washes off you. Say something bad and it goes like a ball bearing into your stomach straight away. Clang.
Yeah, yeah, and finds a little corner where it won't go any further.
And you can't shoot it
Never
out.
get rid of it.
So anyway, sorry, back to
Yeah.
the shaping of you.
Oh, we've
So
only done one thing, haven't we? One shape thing.
it's great though.
Got to say children. Got to say the children. And again, it's I'd like to say, "Oh yes, they were a blessing and everything was wonderful and it changed my life and I've never looked back and all that." But if I'm being honest, I've had quite a lot of ambivalence about that as well. I started two families, not at the same time. I had two goes. So my first attempt was with a wonderful lady called Jan, and we had a boy called Joe, who's now 26, and he's wonderful. And then I ran away from home. I felt trapped, whatever. I ran, left Jan, and then started another family a few years later with Rachel, who's also wonderful. And now I've got three more boys: Sasha, Pip, and Alfie. And so I've been a parent for a long time. Not a particularly good one. I was kind of thinking, well, what would you want from a dad? And I've not always been very present. I'm certainly not a stereotypical male role model. Here's how you do your woodwork. Here's how you drive a car. Here's how you do this. And not even always nice. But then you can't be all the time. So there've been times when I've been a bit unstable and quite weepy, quite volatile, and they've had to ride that. I've never been violent or anything, but I've not been a rock for them at times. But the gifts they have brought, and also they drain you energy-wise, then you get no sleep, all your money's gone, Can't go off on tour. That was a big one for me. Can't go and find my little clearing. But the gifts they brought are just fantastic. I've rediscovered so much of the stuff that makes life interesting and fun. The playing and the unconditional love as well that you get some of the time. So I think I needed to have kids to open up my heart, my shriveled little heart. It was kind of filming over. So the universe provided me with some lessons, if you like, and gifts. They're gifts. They're beautiful.
It's such a wonderful description of the human condition. It reminds me of, acting. It's not just about acting because it's about life, but life is conflict. And Rudy Shelley at the Bristol Old Vic Theatre School, who was the ancient mystic. Did you ever meet him, Rudy Shelley?
I wish I had. I heard so many Rudy stories from various people.
In fact, I might have bored you whilst I was in the grave doing the Gravedigger, but he would say, acting is reacting. And then he would say, ducky, and then the thing that he would say was that the ultimate conflict is how we go about to make ourselves happy. And we are all, as we know, good, bad, shit or indifferent at that proposition. And you're describing beautifully the sort of the ebbs, the flows, the highs, the lows of the human condition. And you're doing it very honestly and authentically. And I really commend you for that.
Cheers, mate. Cheers. I think a lot of it comes from my perception now is a lack of direction, a lack of drive. There have been just the occasional moments deciding to go to drama school or be an actor, deciding to leave one drama school and go out on my own.
Yes.
There have been those few moments where I've gone, I was crystal then. I was absolutely
Yes.
clear and sharp. But they're quite few, those moments.
And do you find they give you enough succour whenever you find them again? Because obviously your moments in the sunshine of your alchemy and your gold as an actor are not over. This is a weird time in everyone's history. It's not over.
Mm.
And it's easy to say that outside looking in, isn't it? Because, the next job will come because of the calibre of the man.
Yeah, I think I've shifted quite a lot. There was a period a while back where I realised that all the fun I had was in places that didn't look so good on your CV. I'd been to the National, I'd been to the Royal Shakespeare Company, I'd been to the Globe lots, had some great times at the Globe, but the really special alive times, those peaks, were happening with a group of mates. There was a group called The Factory.
Was that the Custard Factory? Sorry, I'm just trying to remember.
No. This was a bunch of misfits, a bunch of actors led by a lad called Alex Hassel and another lad called Tim Evans. They were young actors. They went, we want to carry on workshopping. And they just made it happen. And they got my kind of favourite director in the world, Tim Carroll, involved. And then he became quite a core member of this group who just grew and grew it in terms of courage and
it sounds a bit equivalent to do you remember the wrestling school who got together to amplify the work of Howard Barker? It sounds very much like you're there to amplify each other as this sort of core talented ensemble where you all saw each other's ability and capability. Yes.
We had like a big team, if you like, and then the squad would be narrowed down to who's going to do it. About once a week. Once they spent a year workshopping once a week. Then did an intensive that I wasn't around for, and then they thought, well, the next stage was let's invite some people in to watch. It was a version of Hamlet, funnily enough, but the audience decided who was going to play Hamlet, who was going to play Fortinbras. You do like stone, paper, scissors. This is, everyone does it now, but this was like 15 years ago.
Yeah. I love that. I haven't heard it described like that. The rock, paper, scissors as to who's going to do Ophelia, who's going to do Hamlet.
Yeah. And the audience they supplied the props, and there'd be an MC. So at the end of each act, because the act divisions are the real divisions in Shakespeare's plays, not an interval halfway through. At the end of each act, the MC might decide to shake things up. Okay, Act 2 is all overlapping. If you don't overlap, I'm going to buzz you. And then Act 3, you're not allowed to be on the ground while you're talking. Act 4, puppets.
Again, it's so reminiscent. The best type of theatre training, because at the theatre school Rudy Shelley would famously get people to hold chairs up in the air during your audition speech, which was what was teaching you about the nature of a side activity. If you do something else, it often brings you out of your head, and then you start to be more authentic.
Exactly. That's exactly bang on the head there. Yeah. Anything to stop us doing our acting.
Yes, he used to say, "Danger, actor at work," as if you're surrounded by someone with a sort of pneumatic drill acting. Oh, stop acting, darling.
It's a bit dangerous, that talk, isn't it? Because acting is wonderful and should be respected.
Yes.
But we know what we mean when we say, "Oh, a bit of acting going on there," with a capital
Yes.
A. Yeah.
Yeah, when it stops being truthful, that's the moment, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's the thing that the main lesson all of us got from the factory was that that release, that surrender, act of surrender, if you like. So Tim Carroll would come up with anything he could to make sure you couldn't plan, and if he caught you planning, then you lost points basically. And I used to, because I loved trying to get around the rules, so I'd plan and plan and plan. I thought, see if I can get away with this, and very occasionally I'd think, oh, I'm getting away with my plan. And then something would happen. I go, I don't need a plan. This is much more interesting what he's doing. Let's go and jump in there. So very, very in tune with a lot of what you've been doing with your improvisation. We were just finding ways to improvise, but with a fixed point of the verse, the words in the correct order. And then everything else, you're just trying to be as spontaneous and responsive and truthful as you can.
And it comes full circle. I mean, it is the mindset of yes and, yes and, yes and you're describing. But my favourite actors, and again, I'm not just blowing smoke at you, but you are for me in my career, in the limited exposure I've had, you are the best actor I've been on stage with, and it's all about listening. It really is about listening, and the knowledge that what you say next is because you've listened. If you're good.
Yeah, that's one of the big joys I get is when I'm teaching, when I'm working with drama students, getting them to give themselves permission to be active listeners. It's the hardest thing. My training, as far as I can remember, was don't pull focus. I became like world champion still standing person. I could stand still for hours, and then I'd wonder why I was a bit bored with acting. But I was a good little soldier. Don't pull focus.
By the way, do you remember that lovely story, which is stereotypical, about Anthony Hopkins going to an actor who just started in the new Ensemble, and he wandered over to him and said, "What are you doing?" And the actor said, "Well, I'm going to be doing nothing." And he goes, No, I'm doing nothing." And of course, he was really famous. And by the way, you have echoes. I think I mentioned this when I was working with you. You had echoes for me of Anthony Hopkins when I met you. But this idea of yes, it's that really. I'm doing nothing. Not the competition to do nothing.
Great stuff.
I'm back into the clearing and the structure. We're still listening to things that have shaped you. You've had your kids as the last thing, and we've done a wonderful further exploration into the clearings of acting, which I'm really enjoying.
Yeah, well, I talked about how getting lost quite often. So the year 2001, I was lost again. I'm thinking, I was going through the usual. Oh, I'm going to stop now. I can't be doing any acting. It's I'm really unhappy and miserable. And then I went to the Globe. I got a friend she was a cherry. She was Mark Rylance's assistant for a long time, while the place was being built. And she was Sam Wanamaker's assistant before that. She was an enthusiast, and she kept talking about this amazing project, the Globe. And I'd go, oh, yeah, I don't think I like the sound of that. No roof, and and she kept saying, "Come on down, come and have a look. Come on, I think you'd really like them." And I was going, no. Eventually, she said, "Come and have a coffee, Colin. Come and have a coffee." The place had been built by now, so I spent 10 years not going anywhere near the place. I said, "All right, I'll come and have a coffee." And we had a coffee and a good old chat. She's a great girl. And she said, "Why don't you just come and have a little look at the place while you're here?" And so she took me through these great big wooden doors, and there was the Globe. And my jaw just dropped to the ground, and it hit my chest.
Wow.
It hit my heart.
I
just breathed in and went,
so sorry to interrupt you. That was probably a very bad interruption. I just am gobsmacked with the fact that you had to be dragged like a stubborn donkey into the Globe, and yet someone had the tenacity to keep tugging at you because she knew you were about to get a soul chime.
Yeah. So that convinced me. So then I met this guy. They were doing the Scottish play the next year, and so the casting director got me in to meet this guy, Tim Carroll. And they had their Scottish king. They had Macbeth, so they were looking at Duncan or Banquo. They said, obviously, you've been around a long time. You've done a lot of Shakespeare. Duncan or Banquo. And I read a bit of Banquo, And I read a bit of Duncan, and then I just stopped, and I went, I'm sorry. I stopped mid-scene. I'm sorry, I can't take myself seriously playing these parts. And Tim Carroll was quite a ferocious young man at that point. He did this kind of kill face and looked at me, and then he said, well, what do you think you could take yourself seriously doing then, seeing as you're here? And I remember kind of shrugging and going, I don't know, one of the witches? And we left, and I thought, well, that's another audition blown. But then I got the call saying, yeah, do you want to come and be a witch?
Wow.
Yeah.
I
And
suppose that must have surprised everybody, your answer. That surprised me, and that must have surprised him. And the notion of surprise is just beautiful. I love that.
yeah, yeah. And if I hadn't said that, I wouldn't have worked there because I didn't do anything else in the audition that would have made anyone interested.
Yes.
But I still had my doubts about him. So I phoned up a mate who'd worked with Tim Carroll. And I said, look, I've just met this guy, Tim Carroll. I'm not sure, but, you know, there was something going on there, but it seemed a bit edgy. Is he a bit of a knob? I said. And my mate said, funnily enough, I've just got off the phone to Tim Carroll, who's just said, I've just met this guy called Colin Hurley. I'm not sure, but is he a bit of a knob?
I love that. That's the mirror up to nature right there. That's just beautiful. By the way, there's another delicious quote for us both, which is, what's meant for you won't pass you by. And I love the fact that you're just donkeyed into the globe going, oh, shit, a bird. Here it is.
Yeah.
And Tim Carroll, I love that. You've got the sort of echoing knob construct.
Yeah, yeah. So this lad... Will
Have you ever
Keane-
had that conversation with him, by the way?
Oh, yes,
Of course you
yes.
have. Oh, yes.
Yeah, that's how we verified it with each other. And I often refer to myself as a born again actor, and that's because of meeting the Globe and meeting Tim, and then all the other things that ran on from there. The other missing piece I haven't mentioned is teaching. It was at the Globe that I got up the courage to start doing workshops and leading workshops and all that, and that became a massive strand of my practice for about 10-15 years.
And that's such a natural segue for you outside looking in, because of course, you're such an expert in the speaking of Shakespeare that of course you should teach it.
Well, that's what stopped me for so long, was thinking, oh, you have to be an expert. You'd have to know so much to teach it. And like a lot of us, I never felt like I knew much at all. The lovely discovery, once I started leading workshops, was that it wasn't about imparting my knowledge, that it was much more about getting people playing and enabling them, and then just making sure... I had a teacher at Central called David Terrence who once said something. He said, the only thing between you, talking to all of us, the only thing between you and absolute genius is yourself.
Wow.
Yeah, that's what's stopping us all from doing our great acting. And I saw him putting that into practice. I saw him work on a student, getting rid of all his nonsense, and then suddenly seeing this lad, Scotty, for the first time in 2 years, being absolutely amazing, simple, truthful, clear, like a bell, pure. It was amazing. And then, like a lot of us, my mate Scotty then covered it all back up again, because it was so alien. It was so far away from his experience of what you would normally do if you're acting.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love that, clear as a bell. That just, I wanted to just let that hang. That's beautiful.
Yeah, and that's my favourite actors. When you see there's no tricks there. I can't see the joins. I don't know how you're doing that. And I experienced that obviously with Mark Rylance quite a lot. He's the one actor that I've watched in rehearsal and gone, I don't know how you're doing that. But also lots and lots of times with the factory, I'd see dozens of other actors through the games and the pressure and the exercise and the lack of being allowed to bring your shtick. There'd be times when we did a sort of an improvised version of The Seagull. So it was a different translation every night. We'd worked out all the units, all the beats, and then if I turn up and they didn't need me for the squad, I'd sit and watch it. And I knew the play inside out. I knew all the games, and I still was going, how are you doing that?
Yeah.
Pure magic.
Deftly and beautifully put. So we're still listening to the lovely Colin Hurley here in the Good Listening To podcast with me, Chris Grimes. I think we've nearly arrived at the end of Shaking the Tree for the 4 things that have shaped you.
Yes. This one's a bit of an odd one. I'd say alcohol.
Tell me more. You played to Toby Belch, I know that. By the way, so have I. Before I came to the Old Vic Theatre School, I played Sir Toby Belch, so I relate.
Did you enjoy it, Chris? Did you enjoy playing Toby Belch?
I loved it. It was an American director called Eileen Quinn. The name, I had no idea that was going to come to me, but it did. And her wonderful conceit for getting me to play it was that her brother was an alcoholic, and he never had time to eat because he was too busy drinking. So he was very rake thin. And I was a bit like a stick insect back in the day. This would be 1984 or 5. And so she said, look, I really need you to play the character. And I said, well, Sir Toby Belch, we think of, the Falstaffs. He needs to be, I mean, how you're looking now, the bushy-faced Shakespearean muse, you'd expect that's Sir Toby Belch right there. But it was quite interesting to sort of turn it on its head and go for a rakish, because normally it's Ague Cheek that's the rake, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So anyway.
Yeah, I wasn't sure. When I got offered it, I thought, well, it's a nice big part. And then I read the part, like, oh, it's hard. I don't understand that. And I was thinking, oh, why not Feste? Why not Malvolio? The usual nonsense.
But you didn't throw your toys out your pram and say, look, I can't take myself seriously doing that.
No, I was much more desperate than that. I knew it would be a great experience. Mark was there and Tim was there and quite a few mates. I thought, oh, it'll be good.
Yes. And of course, that went to New York as well, didn't it? That was an amazing thing.
Yeah, we did. Yeah. We did a sort of, because it had been done 10 years earlier, and I played Antonio 10 years earlier. And then Bill Stewart, the lovely actor who played Toby Belch when I was in it before, he died, so couldn't really be expected to turn up for the matinees and stuff. So they got me in instead. And I kind of I thought, oh well, it'll be worth doing and be worth watching everybody. Couldn't see myself doing it, so I couldn't see myself not seriously, maybe because it's supposed to be a comedy part. I don't know. Anyway, I had my doubts, but the gift there was I didn't have to do anything. Everyone else was so amazing. I was playing with my mates, and I very, very quickly didn't have to worry about what I was doing at all.
Again, it's such a brilliant
problems dealing.
It's the notion of ensemble again, which is so beautifully coming through there. The idea of just playing in the sunlight, in the clearing of the theatre roundel. Yes. Now
that's something realising. Sorry,
I wondered if we'd lost each other sound-wise there. Did it snag for you, or are you still here? Have we frozen?
No, I'm just rubbish at Zoom, mate. That lag every time. Oh no, we've frozen.
Well, if we have frozen, it won't matter. We can stop and start. Am I frozen?
You're not frozen. Am I frozen?
No, you're back. I think you're back in the room.
No, you're not frozen. Am I?
Come in, Tokyo. I think we're still here, aren't we?
I've got a
worst case scenario. We can clear off and come back in again.
I can hear you. Yes.
There's a slight lag. Do you want to go out and come in?
I just got a little notice up.
You've got to.
Let me just walk around the chair.
Hey, nonny, walk around the chair. See if that works. Nice walking around the chair.
There you go.
Lovely. By the way, did you do the Illyria thing as Malvolio there somewhere? Do you know what? I think we might need to stop and start again. We can piece this together. It can be edited together. So should we stop and come back, and we'll do this as part 2.
All right.
So same place. See you in a minute. Bye.
All right then.
See you in a minute. Well, that was interesting. We're back in the room. We had a bit of a snag there on the comedy of Zoom, comedy improvisation of Zoom. So we're still here with Colin Hurley. Woohoo! And I think we finished. We're talking about alcohol and your relationship to it. And this is the last of the apples that shaped you, I believe.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, shaped by alcohol. Come from a drinking background, working class, Leicester, Midlands. That's what you did. You tried to go out as early as possible. I had to wait till I was almost 18 anyway before I could drink, just because I had such a baby face. But my brothers found a place called the Irish Club, where they could go drinking from about the age of 12, from what I can gather. So,
that's the virtues of the Irish Club right there.
Oh boy, yeah. Yeah, I think I don't have a big issue. I'm not an alcoholic. I've got a brother. Well, I had a brother who's alcoholic. So I know I know what that is. But my other brother loves to drink, and I never saw myself drinking much, but found that it was happening every day. And I think for me, well, there are two things with alcohol. One, if it wasn't for alcohol, I'd probably still be a virgin today. So gratitude there.
Thanks.
But then the other, the longer term thing is, I think I've let it blunt me, or I've used it to blunt myself at times. So it's an easy way out sometimes, isn't it? Oh, I can't do any more work now because I'm having a drink. Or the dry Januaries that I've started doing face me, confront me with that unpalatable truth that if you don't drink, you have more energy, you think clearer, you sleep better, you can get fit more easily. And I so don't want it to be true, because I really don't. There's no denying it. And also, with each decade that goes by, you can get away with less, can't you?
Yes. Again, you're searingly honest about that. And I think, so did you succeed in your dry January this year, or that was a wish?
Oh, well, because I got COVID just before Christmas. So I couldn't eat anything for a week. I couldn't drink. I tried, but I couldn't.
I really tried.
I did, mate. I did. So it was the easiest start. I had a rolling start to dry January, and it was the easiest it's ever been. Yeah, I did the whole month.
I mean, in fact, when we spoke, you had been taken quite hard by COVID, hadn't you? It had really taunt you for 6.
Yes, yeah. It was sort of textbook. The older you are, the worse the symptoms are.
Right.
I was in bed. I couldn't even watch telly. I couldn't even read a book.
Wow.
It was pretty nasty. Flu just doesn't. I mean, I remember having what I think was flu when I was at drama school, and I couldn't get out of bed. I was hallucinating, but it was like 3 or 4 days.
Right.
And then done. But now it was the first time that my partner's really been worried about me. The first time that I couldn't kind of just dismiss it either.
And were there any work demands on you during that period, or that's the irony, is there's nothing going on, so you can just sleep, presumably?
No, I was able to stay in bed. And we had Christmas dinner in mid-January, I think.
Without a glass of aquavita, by the sound of it.
Yes, yeah. But I think the not drinking in January helped to kind of mask some of the longer term effects of the COVID.
Yes.
Because I'll go, oh, I'm not too bad, not too bad, not too bad. And now with wet February behind me, I'm realising, no, I think maybe I need a few more dry months just to balance out. And,
it's very relatable, by the way. I just happened to be on a path of, I just decided, because I picked the wrong pandemic, to give up red wine, not chronically. It was that and M&S cheesy scones. But anyway, not together. But I'm on a path just to see if I can, January to March, and I'm doing okay so far. And I nearly did it last weekend where I thought, do you know what, I'll just have a glass of wine. But I'm just going to do it so I can think I can do it. Mm-hmm. So I think we've shaken your tree about shaping. Now it's 3 things that inspire you, Colin Hurley.
Yeah. I'd have to put my sons in there. They inspire me. Whatever else they've done to me, they've inspired me many a time. A lot of my teaching involves stories about Alfie. When I'm working on acting, I talk a lot about I'll tell you one of my stories, one of my Alfie stories, because he's great. So when he turned 4, Alfie decided to stop calling me Daddy. Okay, so after his 4th birthday, he'd come into the bedroom, he'd go, hello, Mummy, hello, Daddy. No, sorry, hello, Mummy, hello, Colin. And then off we go to play on the iPad or whatever. So we had a few days of this, morning, Mummy, morning, Colin. And then fourth or 5th day, I just stopped him. I was like, oh, yeah, Alfie, before you go, mate, I know you're 4 and everything, but you do know you can still call me Daddy if you want. Yeah. And Alfie looked at me and he went, I know that, Colin. And off he went. So that's my intro to Alfie. But then when I'm teaching being physical with the Shakespeare, kind of, and like responding to each other, there's a thing that Alfie taught me a couple of years after his 4th birthday. He was always very good at going to school. We'd always walk to school, he'd skip to school, he'd run, he'd jump back, and it was great. And then it suddenly changed. Suddenly I was having to drag him to school. I hate school, I don't want to go to school, oh, the school's horrible, da, 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 da. So I had a couple of days of dragging, sort of tug of war, and then it occurred to me, that perhaps I should ask him what's going on. You know?
Good parenting right there.
Yeah. Finally, a penny dropped 2 days later. So we're halfway to school. He's going, I don't want to go to school. School's horrible. So I said, Alfie, what is it? You used to love coming to school. What is it? What's gone wrong? Is it, thinking it might be being bullied, or maybe there's just a teacher with a really loud voice and scaring him or whatever. I said, what is it about school that you don't like now? And Alfie went, it's the learning. It's the learning. So I heard that loud and clear, and I thought I spotted an opportunity to score some dad points. I thought, I know I can empathise, and this will go well. And so I said, the learning. It's the learning. I said, does it make your brain hurt? Thinking, result, there you go, nice one, Dad. And Alfie went, no, it makes my skin bored.
What a great thing to say. What an answer.
Yeah.
My skin bored.
And if you're in the middle of trying to teach people to trust their senses, the story lands, because we do all, with Shakespeare especially, is, yes, I understand. But it's got to hit your body, in your boots, your bones, your body, and your skin. It's this massive organ. It's the biggest organ we have, and yet we don't trust it.
I love that. Makes my skin bored. Fantastic.
Yeah, he had this little period of time of wisdom, if you like, where he identified with his skin. My skin's happy today. And that day, school was making his skin bored.
And do you remember how you answered in the spirit of Yes and when he said that, with you thinking you just scored a parenting goal, then he gave you that really wonderful surprise?
No, I had nothing, mate. I came up with nothing. I just carried on dragging him to school, I think.
By the way, you just made me remember that when we were in our play together, when you were being Hamlet, you saying the word pernicious was, it taught me the word with how you said it. So I do relate to the idea that there are sudden moments when there's the living the word, just the word pernicious. That's just reminded me of that. And how to make sense of Shakespeare is a real challenge, I know.
That's it, because unfortunately we presented, we tend to meet Shakespeare as black squiggles on the page.
Yes.
And we're expecting this amazing writing to go in through our eyes, to our brains. And it was written to go in your ear.
Yeah.
And of course, when you're moving in a space, and the globe taught me loads as well. It's a 3D space, so we're not kind of here's a postcard. You work in the circle all the time.
Yes.
It all falls into place. And you realise that, if someone's behind you, you feel differently to if they're in front of you. If someone's moving towards you, you feel different to if they're moving away. And all that stuff informs the sounds you make.
Yes.
And so
the wooden O of the globe, and then obviously the Henry V chorus idea of the wooden O is again, it's coming full circle back to the clearing, and this is just lovely what you're describing. So your children and Alfie is what inspires you.
I'm amazed, really.
What?
Yeah, I'm amazed that I didn't put the globe as. I'm amazed that we got to the globe as a clearing space in the end, but it's so obvious, isn't it? Now I think about it. But again, had to be dragged, kicking and screaming.
Well, there was a lovely resonance there with Alfie being dragged to school and you being dragged to the globe, and you were going to learn a lot. The learning was going to make your skin not bored. It was going to make it tingle. You're going to get goosebumps. That's what happened, probably.
Yeah. Yes, very much so. Yeah.
So
the others have taught me a lot as well.
Yeah.
The other boys have taught me loads and loads. I guess working with drama students and with teachers, all the workshops and that, I've been very inspired by that work, because as you think you've gone in there with a plan to impart some great wisdom or knowledge or whatever. You've got the skills. Here they come. You're going to get my skills. And then very quickly you meet the group, and then stuff happens.
Yes.
That's at the heart of playing the Globe as well. That's why the Globe teaches us so much about Shakespeare's plays. You've got this space that's as close as we can get to the space he was writing for, so it makes sense.
Yes.
But also you can't push the audience around. You have to meet them and make some sort of a deal about what kind of night you're going to have.
And you used the word enabler many minutes ago, but just the idea of a director, a teacher being an enabler of others within that clearing is a wonderful thing. And Yes, that's the resonance I thought in what you're describing there. And I also heard a really lovely quote about the best teaching, the best directing, because obviously you must be a natural director then, because you're directing people through, the clarity of Shakespeare. But the best resource a good facilitator director can bring into the room is themselves. Mm-hmm. So not over planning, but just being very present and open and receptive to what's going to come back. The law of reciprocity.
Yes. Yeah, there's a phrase that you'll have heard. Some American general said, plans are useless. Planning is essential.
Yes. Let that float. So we're still shaking your apples, because I'll keep bringing us back to the structure. And now it's two things that never fail to grab your attention in the squirrels way.
Now, I've got one more thing that inspires me.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Please do.
If you don't mind, John.
No, please.
It ties in with the short list for clearings, I guess. Being somewhere else inspires me. I was looking to spend 5 months in New York, and there have been times when I've been on tour, and I just get, it's like when you go somewhere new, you look up, whereas when you're at home, you never look up, do you?
Very well put indeed, yes. And of course, our wings have been clipped profoundly in the last year of not being able to fly the nest in that way, to explore. So are you champing at the bit to get on the open road of exploration again?
I found new roads, I think, Chris. You have to, don't you? Yeah, yes. We all have. So I've finally ridden a bike properly for the first time since I was 6 years old. When I was 6, I came off my bike and decided, that's it, I'm never getting on one of them again.
You had another of your very well placed hissy fits. I'm not doing that.
Yes. I did. I sulked with my bike. I don't know. I mean, it's amazing. I learned to walk because I could have just been down there going, well, no, that's too dangerous.
By the way, I completely relate to that too. Not the falling off, but my bike is my freedom. I love my bike. It absolutely is my freedom. And during the pandemic, I got twonked off mine because a dog said hello to my A-frame, and I haven't fallen off my bike for years, but then I was going over the handlebars mouthing the words, oh fuck, as you do when you're going to come off your bike. But it made me realise there was a parallel in the pandemic not being metaphorically an easy bike ride. This whole period of our history has not been an easy ride.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry I nearly cauterised your last thing that inspires you.
Yeah. Oh, do you know what? I've cheated on the inspiring thing as well, because I've got to say books inspire me. And books could have been my clearing as well. Books. That's all I'll say on that subject.
And what are we reading at the moment, dear? What's our favourite book?
Well, I've been getting any Jasper Fforde books that I can. Have you heard of Jasper Fforde?
I haven't. I'm going to write that down. Jasper Fforde. Yeah,
with 2 F's and an E on the end. Ford.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, if you like Terry Pratchett, you'll love Jasper Fforde.
Ah.
He's created this world where it's sort of pretty parallel to us, except that Swindon is a very happening place. Where all the adventures happen.
Which is a surprise to many when you say that.
Anyone out there in Swindon? Sorry. Yeah, and he's created this world where there are all these different branches of the police force that deal with special areas, special territories. Like the normal police can't deal with time travel, so they've got the time travel police, and the normal police can't deal with literature, like characters coming out of books or people kidnapping characters in books.
Lovely.
So they've got the lit text for that, and he just plays and plays and plays.
Are there any comedy, please? Because that's where I'd have to worry. We mentioned The Great Escape at the very beginning. We had this construct of being The Great Escape from the Comedy Police continues with the next show. Because you're only ever one sketch or scene away from being arrested by the Comedy Police by going, stop, that was shit.
No, I think the Comedy Police, everyone's a comedy policeman in themselves, I'd say. But they tend to be there not to stop anything, just to encourage it. Comedy gardeners, perhaps. Comedy curators. And
by the way, to give something back to you as well, the books that I read at the beginning of the pandemic were surprisingly dark, but out of it came this golden nugget of beauty about comedy. It was a trilogy about The Cartel by Dan Wilmslow. Very, very dark, despairing. desperate but brilliant. And out of it, with this golden nugget about comedy, which has really helped me, which is we have to laugh because laughter, as we already know, is the first evidence of freedom.
Nice.
By somebody called Rosanna Castellanos, and that inspired me a lot during this time about how comedy and a sense of humour needs to pull you and us towards our future by keeping perspective.
Lovely.
So 2 things that never fail to grab your attention. Oh, squirrels books is one of those, or was that your cheating?
Yeah. Other people's bookshelves.
Ah, love that.
They're just magnetic and can't get away from them.
So if we always lose you, you're in the library, is that right?
Yeah, that's where I spent my A-level years, my lost A-level years. I failed my A-levels. I was bunking off school to go and sit in a library. I should have been taking drugs and, smoking and all that stuff, but no. Oh, my cunning plan, go and sit in a library all day. I think the other thing that never fails to grab my attention is a television left on in the background.
Okay, very interesting.
My household, I struggle now still with, if I go and visit my mum, the telly is on, and there'll be another one in the next room as well. And when my dad was still alive, it was quite tricky to negotiate, because I can't just storm in there and go, "Oh, please, when you turn the telly off so we can have a conversation." But sometimes they turn it down a bit, but that doesn't solve it for me. I'm still seeing flickering images, and
yes, there's a distraction constantly. Then
yes. It's up there with multitasking, the myth of multitasking, I think.
I agree. Yes,
yeah.
It is indeed a myth. We've not evolved as a species. We can't multitask.
Well, certainly some of us can't, and I refuse to even acknowledge it as a concept anymore. Yeah, so they'd be my 2 things: other people's bookshelves and that darn flickering screen.
No one's ever answered in that way before. I commend you for that. And now one quirky or unusual fact about you as we shake your tree to come to the end of this section, but what quirky or unusual fact about you we couldn't possibly know until you tell us.
Okay, now there are a select few people who could know this, but there's not many of them. But my secret name is Dave Gorman.
Dave Gorman?
Dave Gorman.
Right, and why is that?
There are a lot of... Well, there's a lad called Dave Gorman who used to do a comedy show, and he would use his life as a laboratory, and so him and his mate Danny would come up with mad projects, and one of them was his mate Danny bet him one year that Dave Gorman wasn't that common a name or unusual a name, and he set Dave the task of finding another 52. I think it was 52 Dave Gormans in the world. And so they made a show out of this. Dave Gorman.
I remember it, actually.
Well, I went along to his pre-Edinburgh version of it. So he got about 6 at the time. And he was tracking down Dave Gormans, and he was tracking out, because he's a mathematician, he was going, how many miles per Dave Gorman does that, and he'd bring out a pie chart. And this was the period when I went to see it because I was studying comedy, because I was thinking that was going to solve everything, all the problems in my life. So there I was in the audience, had a couple of beers, and Dave Gorman took us through his journey trying to find these Dave Gormans, and he was going to carry on trying to find them. It got, I don't know, maybe 10, 12. And then he said, are there any Dave Gormans in tonight? And one bloke said, yeah, me. So Dave Gorman, oh, great, that's another Dave Gorman. I didn't have to travel for that. That brings the miles per Dave Gorman down. And then he said, is there anyone here who would be prepared to change their name to Dave Gorman? Silence. And then he said, I'm offering 250 quid. I said, right, that's me.
I'm Dave.
Yeah. And so the original deal was you change your name by deed poll to Dave Gorman.
Yeah.
And it'll be over 250 quid. It got watered down slightly because we realised that there could be problems. Next day, I'm sober, and he calls me, going, "Are you still on for Dave?" I said, "Well, no, listen, mate. I'm an actor. I'm not sure about you." But I didn't kind of say no totally, and so we came up with a compromise. There was me and another 6 people. 2 of them were women.
Right.
Who, at the end of his quest, went down to a solicitor's, and we signed a piece of paper to certify that we would be now called Dave Gorman. So it wasn't quite as official as a deed poll thing, and we never got the money.
Oh, I like the fact we've stated that here. You
Yes.
kept your side of the bargain, but Dave Gorman didn't give you the 250 squids, watered down though it was.
Well, the small print was, it's 250 quid for the deed poll thing.
Okay. So he's got you on a technicality, I'm hearing there.
Yeah, yeah, and I don't begrudge him it. He's a great bloke.
I remember that was a very seminal show of its time. That was like a moment in the sunshine where that was all the rage for a while, wasn't it? I love
Yeah,
I love the measure of distance, how many Dave Gormans to the mile and all that
yeah.
shebang.
Oh, he's got a wonderful mind. And there's one casting. Do you know John Cannon, who does casting?
The name is familiar. Yep.
Yeah, he casts one of those hospital things, I think. But he saw it, and there was a little clip of me saying, "Yeah, I'll do that." And so he always calls me Dave now. If he gets me for something, I'll go, "Oh, Dave, come on in."
My son Stan and I call each other Dave all the time. In fact, I call my daughter Lily Dave. We have this ongoing. It's not connected to Dave Gorman, but all right, Dave is just what we do. So we've shaken your tree. Hurrah! Now we're still in the clearing. This is still Colin Hurley. I'm still Chris Grimes. This is still the Good Listening To podcast. Now we're going to move away from your tree, and Colin Hurley, we're going to talk about alchemy and gold now. You've been giving me that in spades anyway, but I also like to think of it as being diamonds beneath our feet. So when you are here at purpose and in flow, doing what you love to do the most, what is the alchemy and the gold that Colin Hurley, Dave Gorman, likes to bring to the world?
Um, I'd flip it over. It's the reverse. If I can be open and receptive to all the gifts and notice and be awake and present, then the gifts arrive. So you bring yourself, don't you? Anthony Hopkins, learn your lines and turn up. So if you know your lines and you really are relaxed enough to notice stuff. The way I do it when I'm teaching sometimes, if I've got people on the actual globe stage, I'd say, let's spend some time on receive. Because as an actor, you tend to be encouraged to be on transmit. Here's my performance, seeking approval, yeah? But just go on receive. And that's what the best actors do. They breathe and they notice stuff that they can then respond to. And so then the space between you all becomes very alive. And that would be my priority now, to be able to truthfully and instinctively respond straight away. When you're playing tennis, I play tennis really badly. I can't hit it. Every now and then, though, a ball will come whizzing at me so fast, I just stick my hand out and play a blinder. If you don't think about it, it happens.
Yes, the instincts.
Yeah. So, but finding that state when you're in a play where there's so much that's in theory been set is a different kind of challenge. But that's where the gold is for me, I think.
Beautiful. And it adds so much texture to the notion of subtext as well. What lies beneath the surface is this ability to be truly present in order to respond.
Yeah. There is no wrong, and no retreat, no surrender is another one. And that's something Tim Carroll used to make us do, even if we're rehearsing. If you fluffed a line and you went, "Oh, sorry," you go, "Why are you doing that? Why are you saying no sorry?" If you don't say I'm sorry, then we won't know that
Yes.
was deliberate.
So no retreat, no surrender. That's a lovely sort of way to put the cherry on the cake, which is where we're going shortly. So now we're arriving at the point where I'm going to award you with a cherry on the cake, Colin Hurley, for gracing us with your presence here and being in receptive listening mode on the Good Listening To podcast. And the cherry on the cake. Now, it's particularly exciting to land this for you. Inspired by all the world's a stage, and far be it from me to say it, but all the men and women merely players, and each man in his time plays many parts, his acts being 7 ages. We can talk about legacy, how you'd most like to be remembered, what you'd like your legacy to be, or your favourite inspirational quote, or what advice you might give to a younger version of yourself. It's just a wonderful final metaphor for you to leave us with a legacy of this conversation. So sorry, that's a multiple question, but it's open to you where you go with it.
Good. I like it. It's such a brilliant question. How would you like to be remembered? Because as soon as you ask yourself that, you think, "Oh, what have I done to make that happen?" So I love it as a question. And I found that I have to divide people up because I want different people to remember me for different things. So I guess my children, I'd want them to think of me as someone who had fun times with, that they felt safe with, supported by. So obviously I'll change all my parenting to make that happen now. Students and other actors, well, yeah, students, I'd say, you know, if they remembered me as someone who'd helped them feel safe and feel playful. The big thing, the word I keep using again is play, play, play. Let's play. Come on, let's play. And if I can get them there and see them kind of blossoming, that makes me happy. And I would like, my vanity would like, you know, to think when I'm gone, there'll be some people there going, oh, yeah, I can enjoy that, because I remember when Colin said, don't be scared of that, or whatever. I'd like to be thought of as supportive, fun to work with, fun, by other actors and directors even. And then I've got a special one for all the people that I've wronged and let down and disappointed and hurt and not been there for, and all that. And I had to think about this, and I thought, well, I'd like them to think he was worth the forgiving. Wow. I've got a lot of exes who I'm on really good terms with, and they've forgiven me for all my nonsense. So I'd like them all, and then all the other people, the army of people that I've let down over the years, to just go, well, I'm glad I forgave him. It was worth it.
There's a lovely adage: if you can't top it, stop it. You know, you are forgiven is such a wonderful way to be remembered. Beautiful. So, Colin Hurley, thank you so much for gracing us with your presence here on the Good Listening To podcast. It's been a real privilege to talk to you and to reconnect to you again. So thank you very much indeed. One final thing, where can we find out more about you on the internet, should we wish to do so?
I'm still working on the website. Well, my 16-year-old started it and then it got parked. I'm afraid I'm not very good at all that. So,
although Wikipedia have got your back, by the way. And obviously, well, hey. So listen, thank you so much. That was a wonderful conversation. So you've been listening to the delight that is Colin Hurley here on the Good Listening To podcast with me, Chris Grimes, and good night.